Have you ever felt abandoned in the midst of your struggles, wondering why you're going through so much pain? What if I told you that, like Joseph, your most difficult moments could be the path to God's purpose for you? Joseph's life was marked by tradition and profound suffering, but God used each of these experiences to transform him into a leader capable of saving a nation. Believe me, in pain, there is a hidden purpose, and God's protection never fails. Keep watching and discover how Joseph's journey can change your perspective on the struggles you face today. Have you ever found yourself alone in the silent shadow of uncertainty, your heart pounding as if the very air around you might shatter, and wondered, am I truly safe when God seems silent? Imagine a night shrouded in darkness, where every whisper of fear feels like a storm, but unseen hands weave a tapestry of protection just beyond your sight. This is the sacred mystery of God's silent work, a gentle presence moving through the stillness, guarding, shaping, and sustaining us when we cannot yet comprehend. Stay with me as we enter this silent wonder, and if you seek hope in the unseen, subscribe and follow these devotional reflections. In Scripture, we see many stories where God's protection is revealed in silent and powerful ways, especially in moments of great danger and uncertainty. One example is the story of Moses, when he attacked Pharaoh's army at the edge of the Red Sea. The pressure was immense, and death seemed imminent, with the waters of the sea before them and Pharaoh's army behind. But in the midst of this harrowing scenario, God's hand moved invisibly, parting the sea and creating a safe passage for his people. There were no great explosions or visible signs of immediate intervention, but rather a powerful and swift force, allowing the Israelites to escape death. This moment teaches us that, often, God's protection does not manifest itself in dramatic or noisy ways, but rather in subtle ways, moving the waters of our lives without us being able to see or fully understand. Similarly, we see the story of Esther, when she, with great courage and confidence, turned away from the king, knowing her life could be at risk. Without a display of power, without shouting or predictions, God acted behind the scenes, touching the king's heart and changing the destiny of his people. God's intervention was not thunderous, but silent, and yet it was extremely effective, turning a death sentence into a victory. These stories remind us that divine protection often happens silently, out of sight. Even when everything seems wrong and problems pile up before us, God's invisible hand is at work, guiding us, protecting us, and leading us to a place of safety. Sometimes what we need most is trust, even when we can't clearly see the path ahead. Like Moses before the Red Sea or Esther before the king, we are invited to trust in God's constant presence, knowing that even when he doesn't speak aloud, his protection never fails and his faithfulness never wavers. Trusting God in times of trial and uncertainty is not always easy. However, it is one of the most profound acts of faith we can offer. In Proverbs 3 verses 5-6, we are reminded, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." This verse calls us to a trust that goes beyond mere feelings or fleeting hopes. It challenges us to a deliberate choice of trust in God's wisdom, even when the path before us is shrouded in darkness and confusion. Trust is not a passive act. It is an active surrender, a deep commitment to believing that God's plans are good, even when we cannot understand how they will unfold. Psalm 37 verse 3 reinforces this call, saying, "Trust in the Lord, and do good. Dwell in the land, and enjoy safe pastures." Here, trust becomes an action that demands perseverance, an unshakable trust that invites us to rest in God's protection and provision, especially during life's storms. Joseph's story is a remarkable example of how trust in God is tested and refined amidst hardship. Sold into slavery by his own brothers and later unjustly imprisoned, Joseph's life was marked by betrayal, loneliness, and uncertainty. Yet, amid these trials, he chose to trust in God's sovereignty. His faith was not blind optimism, but a profound truth that God was working behind the scenes, even when explanations were bleak and discouraging. Over time, God's purpose became clear when Joseph rose to power in Egypt and was able to save many lives during a great famine. Joseph's journey teaches us that trust is a choice we make every day, especially when the future is uncertain and God's silence seems assured. It is in this space of trust that God's silent work begins to reveal itself, transforming trials into triumphs. Trust, like the key to a door, opens the way to experience God's protection, even when we can't see the next step. Like Joseph, we are called to place our trust not in our own understanding, but in God's faithfulness. This trust empowers us to face challenges with courage, knowing that God is present and working on our behalf, even when His hand seems invisible. It shifts our perspective, allowing us to rest in the certainty that God's timing and plans are perfect. By choosing to trust, we align ourselves with God's promises, allowing His peace, which surpasses all understanding, to answer us. By embracing trust, we find strength to endure hardships, hope to persevere, and a deeper connection with God's protective care. While this trust isn't always easy, it's always worth it. As you navigate your own trials, remember that trusting God isn't contingent on circumstances. Rather, it's a firm choice, rooted in faith. Let this truth be an encouragement to you. Lean fully on God's silent and powerful protection, knowing that He is guiding your steps, even when the path seems uncertain. God's silence can often be one of the most challenging aspects of our faith. When prayers seem unanswered and the presence we so desperately seek seems distant, it's easy to struggle with feelings of abandonment, doubt, and fear. A striking example of this can be seen in the life of Joseph. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and then unjustly imprisoned, Joseph was thrown into a dark, cold prison, feeling completely isolated, forgotten by both men and God. The silence was heavy and felt reassuring. But, as the story reveals, this silence was not a sign of abandonment, but of a sacred space where God was quietly at work, shaping Joseph's character and preparing him for a greater future. The stillness before the storm, often disconcerting but never empty, is the environment in which God grows powerfully old, inviting us to trust Him even when He cannot see His work. Like Joseph, we are called to believe that God's timing is perfect, even when our hearts are filled with pain and uncertainty. Trust is not simple, but it is a commitment to hope, even when the path ahead seems bleak. In David's story, the same tension between silence and faith is evident. Before becoming king, David endured years of persecution, hiding in caves and deserts, often feeling abandoned and ignored. But even in God's silence, David learned to trust not in immediate deliverance but in God's faithful love, and his faith was refined in the process. God's silence, far from being a sign that He had withdrawn, became a divine invitation to deepen our dependence and wait patiently. Silence shapes faith in a unique way, strengthening us and preparing us for what is yet to come. This moment of waiting, in silence, can make us feel on the brink of uncertainty, as if there were nothing to support us except a faint hope. However, it is in these moments that God teaches us to rest, knowing that even when we see nothing happening, He is orchestrating circumstances behind the scenes. God works silently in every detail of our journey, moving invisible pieces and guiding us toward a greater purpose. This stillness is more than a passive pause. It is an active preparation of our faith, an invitation to trust in God's invisible hand that guides us, even without our realizing it. It is in this space of silent trust that our faith is strengthened, our hope is renewed, and the divine work begins to unfold. When we look back to previous generations, stories of God's faith and protection become a beacon that lights our path, especially when life's storms seem to threaten us. Deuteronomy 32 verse 7 exhorts us, "Remember the days of old, consider the generations of old. Ask your father and he will tell you, your ancestors and they will explain to you." This reflection calls us to consider that God's faithfulness is not an isolated experience, but a tapestry of stories of divine intervention that spans generations. The memories of how God delivered the Israelites from Egypt, how He led His people through the wilderness, and how He protected them in battle remind us that He is steadfast in His faithfulness. These testimonies are not just reminders of the past, but sources of trust and confidence for the present. Each shared story strengthens our faith, like a tree that grows deep into the earth, ever steadfast despite external storms. As we reflect on these narratives of trust in God, we are reminded that the same God who guided our ancestors is the one who guides us today. In times of difficulty, by remembering God's faithfulness in the past, we can find strength to face our own struggles, knowing that His protection and care are unchanging. Therefore, when doubt and fear try to overcome us, we should look back, remember the many times God has been faithful, and find renewed confidence in His continued protection. As we hold these memories in our hearts, we can rest in the assurance that the same God who guided us in the past will continue to guide us in the future, offering His silent yet powerful protection and guidance. Our faith, fueled by the memory of God's faithfulness, allows us to face life's storms with unshakable confidence, knowing that in His silent presence, we will always find refuge. Life can sometimes feel like a rough sea, where waves of fear, uncertainty, and hardship relentlessly batter us. In these moments, it's natural to feel at the mercy of forces beyond our control, as if we were adrift in a boat. However, Scripture offers us examples of faith that teach us to trust in divine protection, even when everything around us seems out of place. The story of Esther is a remarkable example of this trust. Thrust into a situation of imminent danger, she didn't hesitate to approach the king, even knowing her life could be in danger. She knew that, although her action was bold, divine protection guided her. This trust in God wasn't a momentary impulse, but a profound truth that God was working behind the scenes, transforming a potential disaster into a great victory. Similarly, we see the story of David and Goliath, where a young shepherd found himself facing an armed and imposing giant. The battlefield seemed favorable to Goliath, but David fully trusted in divine protection. He knew that his strength came not from his skill, but from his faith in God, who guided him to defeat the giant. David's victory was not simply over a physical adversary, but from trust in God's protection, which transforms seemingly insurmountable challenges into opportunities for triumph. These stories don't show us that faith will eliminate problems, but that it will transform the way we face them. When we place our trust in God, even in the face of difficulties, we find the strength to move forward, knowing that He is with us in every battle. Returning to the image of life's storms, difficulties don't disappear, but the peace Jesus offers transforms how we deal with them. In Mark 4 verses 39 to 40, the story of Jesus calming the storm teaches us that trusting in God doesn't mean the absence of problems, but the confidence that He has control over all situations. When the disciples were in the boat, at the mercy of the storm, panic gripped them. But when they heard Jesus' voice commanding the wind and waves to be calm, the storm ceased. Tranquility came not from the absence of problems, but from the divine power that calms chaos. Jesus shows us that, even in the midst of the greatest challenges, His peace can fill our hearts and give us the confidence to face any adversity. Like the calm that follows a storm, God's peace is firm and profound, strengthening us to overcome life's challenges. When we surrender this trust, we find a peace that goes beyond visible statistics, a peace that transcends human understanding. Even when life's storms seem to exhaust us, we know we are being guided by God's invisible hand, protecting us and leading us to a place of safety. Trust in His protection is not only a foundation for our faith, but also a strength that enables us to move forward with renewed courage and unwavering hope. By choosing to trust God, we invite His peace to envelop us, to enthuse us, and to give us the strength to continue, knowing that He is with us every step of the way. Life often leads us down uncertain paths, where doubts and difficulties make us question whether there is truly anyone guiding us. However, Scripture assures us that God's presence is with us at all times, even when we cannot see it. Psalm 139 verse 10 reminds us of this profound truth. Even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will hold me fast. These words paint a serene picture of an invisible yet firm hand, guiding us with a presence that envelopes us, even when we cannot discern it with our eyes. God's hand extends to us, offering direction, support, and sustenance, even in the midst of the unknown. Imagine this calm, steady hand gently touching your life, guiding you through winding, dark roads. Though God's presence is invisible, it is palpable in every moment we lean on Him, finding strength and peace in the face of adversity. The certainty that we are being guided by this invisible hand assures us that we are never alone. Even when the path seems uncertain and challenges pile up, God's hand holds us steady, shaping each step of our journey with a love and care that surpasses our comprehension. In Romans 8 verse 28, we are reminded that God works in all things for the good of those who love Him. This promise encourages us to trust in God's purpose, even when we can't see the complete plan. Life often feels like a tapestry in progress, with loose threads and disconnected moments. But just as a master weaver works behind the scenes, skillfully weaving together threads, God is quietly forming a greater work. The beauty of His plan reveals itself over time, as He uses every circumstance, good or difficult, to bring good to those who invest in His love. God's invisible hand is not passive. It was moving forward, weaving our story silently but intentionally. Even when we can't see the details, we can be certain that He is guiding us and charting the course. The peace we feel comes from understanding that even when everything seems silent or in chaos, God is in motion, causing all things to work together for our good. Sometimes God's guidance isn't dramatic. It makes itself felt in moments of stillness, in the whisper of comfort that brings serenity amidst the storm. It's a subtle yet powerful touch that sustains us and gives us the strength to move forward. Our task is to remain attentive to this guidance, trusting that, even when we don't see it, we are being extended by God's loving hand. He never abandons us, and, contrary to what our eyes may perceive, He is always working behind the scenes to guide us to His perfect plan. By embracing this truth, we can live with confidence and hope, knowing that our journey is safe under the care of a God who loves us unconditionally. Even in times of uncertainty, we can rest in the serenity that God's invisible hand is gently guiding us, steadying our steps, and leading us to the fulfillment of His divine purpose. Faith often finds its greatest challenges in moments of silence, when the absence of clear answers leaves us adrift in a sea of uncertainty. During these times, when God's voice seems distant and time seems to drag on, we are called to a deeper trust, one that goes beyond what our senses can perceive. The stories of Abraham and Elijah are powerful examples of how faith is shaped and strengthened in times of silent waiting. Imagine Abraham, under the infinite sky, counting the stars as God promises him that he will be the father of many nations. However, the promise was slow to materialize. For years, Abraham saw his faith tested by the lack of signs, and God's silence seemed immense. But rather than surrender to despair, Abraham chose to trust. With each night he observed the stars, his faith deepened. He believed that, even if he saw nothing happening, God's timing would be perfect. This patient trust, which remains steadfast despite appearances, is a clear example of how faith can grow when we cling to the hope that, at some point, the unseen will become reality. The story of Elijah, on the other hand, reveals how faith is forged in solitude and stillness. After his victory over the prophets of Baal, Elijah found himself on the run, discouraged and alone, hiding in a cave. For 40 days and 40 nights, he experienced a profound silence, where questions and fears loomed large. But it was in this silence that God revealed Himself in an unexpected way, not in grand natural events like fire, wind, or earthquake, but in a gentle whisper. This intimate moment of stillness transformed Elijah's despair into renewed strength. The image of a man in deep solitude, listening intently to God's still voice, illustrates that God is not limited to dramatic acts, but often reveals Himself in the quiet moments where our faith is refined. These stories teach us that faith isn't just about immediate miracles or instant answers. Sometimes true faith is found in silence, when there are no visible answers or clear signs. It is in this silence that faith is tested and deepened, taking deep root in the confidence that God is at work, even when we can't see or understand. God's work is often silent, but no less vibrant. In the silence, He is preparing us for something greater, strengthening and shaping us in ways we can't immediately perceive. Like Abraham and Elijah, we are called to trust God during times of waiting, even when everything seems at a standstill. These quiet times can be moments of growth, drawing us closer to God in ways we never imagined. By trusting in His faithfulness, even when nothing seems to be happening, we find strength and hope to move forward. Faith, then, becomes more than a fleeting belief. It becomes a force, a tension that sustains us and propels us toward the future God has prepared for us. It is in quiet endurance and unwavering trust that we find our true strength, and it is through these moments that our faith becomes firmer, deeper, and more prepared for the challenges ahead. As we reach the end of this reflection, it is essential to remember that God's protection is a constant in our lives. Even when it moves silently and unseen, His presence is always with us, like a gentle breath that calms our hearts or a discreet light that guides our path in the darkest hours. We may not always feel dramatic moments or hear thunderous signals, but God's silent action is immense, powerful, and unshakable. Trusting in this protection leads us to a peace that transcends human understanding, a tranquil peace that assures us that, no matter the size of the storms or the challenges we face, we are safe in God's hands. I want to share a story that always encourages me during difficult times. There was a time in my life when I felt lost, directionless, surrounded by uncertainty and fear. I couldn't see a clear path forward, but I chose to rest in the silent trust that God was working behind the scenes. Over time, doors began to open. Peace, which seemed distant, settled in my heart, and solutions emerged in ways I never could have imagined. Even when I couldn't see it, God's invisible hand was guiding me, and this experience reaffirmed that His protection is not just a distant promise, but a present reality, shaping our lives in silent but profound ways. Now, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Where have you experienced God's silent protection? What moments in your life have revealed the strength of His invisible hand, weaving unexpected solutions and bringing peace to your heart amidst chaos? How have these experiences shaped your trust in God? Remember, even when you haven't been able to fully see or understand God's work, His faithfulness never fails. As we embrace this truth, our trust is strengthened, and we can walk with the assurance that we are never alone. If this reflection resonates with you, I invite you to like this video and share your own stories in the comments below. Your experiences are an inspiration and encouragement others need on their journey of faith. Let's build a community united by hope, trust, and the certainty of God's loving protection. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more reflections that renew faith and strengthen trust in divine care. Trust in God, rest in His peace, and move forward with confidence, knowing that He is always by your side, guiding every step of your journey.